Hello and welcome to the Crypto Insider interview. I am Vlad and today my guest is Steve Jain from the Bisq Network, and he is involved with a lot of work in this very decentralized and voluntarist project. But usually he does technical writing, he does copywriting, he does social media, and sometimes even some web development. And it's very nice that I got to talk to him and I met him via Twitter because the Bisq network is a decentralized Bitcoin service, which is non-custodial, non-KYC, and also has a DAO project, which, unlike the sound of it, which usually gets associated with the Ethereum project and the DAO hack, is actually built 100% on top of Bitcoin. And it's good to have you here, Steve. Hello.
Hi. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So how did you get involved in the Bisq network?
It was really a tweet. I discovered the project in late 2017. And so I followed them on Twitter. I downloaded the software. Did not really use the software, but I did try to keep current with what they were doing. And in early 2018, there was a tweet for a call for technical writers. The team really wanted to boost the documentation for the project. And I have a background in a couple of different industries, and writing has kind of been the common thread through all of those that I've, I guess, acquired a pretty good skill set in. And so I figured it was a good way to get involved. And so I reached out and started doing some documentation and just kind of snowballed my involvement from there. Did more and more on the communication side with, like you mentioned, copywriting and web development and speaking recently.
So if you were to define the Bisq network in very simple and straightforward terms, what would it be?
I would say that Bisq is a truly, we can talk more about why, but a truly decentralized Bitcoin marketplace, which prioritizes three things. So that's privacy, user security, and censorship resistance.
So you answered the question about what. So I know what Bisq is, but how do you accomplish these tasks? Because I know that now in 2019, it's becoming increasingly difficult to retain these qualities and not KYC your users and not collect a lot of data about the way they use the network. So how can you actually accomplish this?
Yeah. So the how is there are a couple of different facets to it. So number one is that Bisq is software that you run, desktop software that you run on your computer. It's not a website. I mean, there is a website, but trading takes place only through the software. When you run the software, you become a part of the Bisq peer-to-peer network that runs on top of Tor. And so there is no central server to rely on for trading. The software, because it is local desktop software that's open source and free Libra software, it's verifiable from top to bottom. You can fully inspect the code, and there are no accounts. I mean, when you download the software, you don't sign up for anything. You don't need to provide an email address or any information. You just start using the software and make offers and take offers as you please. Of course, I mentioned Tor. Aside from accounts, nobody even knows where you are, who you are, or anything. It's complete privacy in that respect. So the whole stack is open source, verifiable, private, and of course, I probably don't have to mention non-custodial. You're in control of your Bitcoin the whole time. So that's the software side. And of course, it's quite resilient in that way, and that it's peer-to-peer. But the other part that I think a lot of other exchanges miss when they attack the problem and try to run a decentralized Bitcoin exchange is the governance side of it, the management side of it. It's not enough to have decentralized software. if the team in charge of it is still a single point of failure. That's the kind of the approach that we're taking. And so the Bisq network has made a lot of effort to make the team that runs the Bisq software itself as decentralized as possible. So there is no company, there is no nonprofit entity or legal entity of any kind that runs or even operates the software from the background. So there is no legal jurisdiction that we need to be worried about. There is no, like I said, no entity. There are no CEOs or managers or anyone in any privileged position to run the Bisq network. The forces that run the Bisq network are themselves a network. And we're going to formalize that with the Bisq DAO, and which is built on Bitcoin to make it all work, to handle the funding and the strategy making. But that's the gist of it. The software is decentralized, and the tools to manage the software are also decentralized.
So what you're telling me right now is that the Bisq network is basically BitTorrent for Bitcoin exchanges?
That's a very good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I mean, BitTorrent was a protocol that was, totally decentralized, had a lot of people, a lot of different parties involved in running the various parts of it. And yeah, in that way, Bisq is very similar.
That's a very nice correlation when you think about it, that you have Bitcoin and BitTorrent for a Bitcoin marketplace. That's a great way of marrying the various technologies that we have available.
Yeah, I mean, one of the founders of Bisq, Chris Beams, put it in a very cool way. I think he was trying to describe the vision of Bisq, and he put it like this. I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, we have Bitcoin itself, and there's technologies like Lightning to act as a payments layer. What we want Bisq to become is the Forex layer for Bitcoin, the foreign exchange layer of Bitcoin. We want to embody the Bitcoin principles as much as possible. And so, Bisq is less of a thing, of a venture, than it is an idea and a network and software that we want to pervade the space, and just to become like the default way to buy and sell Bitcoin all over the globe.
That sounds really great. And unlike local Bitcoins, you don't have KYC and you're non-custodial. But at the same time, do you enable BTC to fiat exchanges?
Oh yeah, that's, I think, one of the determining or distinguishing factors of Bisq. 100% enable fiat to crypto, fiat to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin to crypto. So, I mean, Bitcoin is the base currency in Bisq. It's the main, the main currency, if you will. It's the whole point that Bisq exists. But if you want, you can trade for fiat, US dollars, euros, and then of course, if you want to trade to other currencies, like Monero is a big one, a big market on Bisq. You can do either one.
How many cryptocurrencies do you currently have, and which ones are the most used ones? You mentioned Monero, but what else is popular?
It's a good question. Let me take a look. I know Monero is the most common. We also, Beam, so one of the Mimblewimble implementations is one of them. We have Bitcoin Rhodium was doing pretty well. Namecoin is another one. But the full list, I don't know the exact number. The full list varies quite a bit because we have, it's an open source project, so we have people add currencies every month. There are a couple of new ones, and then a lot of the altcoins tend to not be traded as much, so they're removed. A number of them are also removed every month, so it's hard to keep an exact tally of the offering. But Monero and I think Bitcoin Rhodium, Namecoin, these are some of the more common ones.
I know that there are a lot of decentralized exchanges like CryptoBridge, and I think I can think of a few others. And how would you say that Bisq is an advantage in this situation? Why would anyone not use decentralized exchanges and switch to Bisq?
I think, and the reason, it's really the reason I think that I've been so attracted to the project. Bisq takes everything to the extreme. It's just, yes, it's decentralized in ways that other exchanges are decentralized, but it's also decentralized in ways that those other exchanges could never just don't do. So I mentioned the fact that it's software that you download. That's, I think, a factor that it's unique to Bisq. And then, of course, the management mechanism. So the fact that it's not a company, it cannot be pressured into doing anything it doesn't want to do. I don't think there's any other, I mean, look, we've seen what happened with local Bitcoins. There's a number of other exchanges, Ether Delta was another recent one, where Shapeshift, of course, also, these guys for the longest time, no KYC, and they were promising freedom. And there was another one too, I forgot. It was funny, they had a tweet a few months ago where they explicitly said, no KYC ever. And then like a month or two ago, they, lo and behold, KYC. So I think the best answer to your question is that the determining factor is governance. I think it's safe to say engineering is not easy. I mean, I've done software development myself, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy to engineer and create an exchange, a Bitcoin exchange. But I think it's a problem, it's a challenge that we know how to solve. I don't think any of these exchanges had technical problems, and that's why they had to implement KYC. It was a governance problem. These exchanges were pressured into doing KYC because they had no other choice from a control perspective. And that's the problem that Bisq solves by design, not being able to be pressured like that.
So how does,
yeah.
Go on.
Go ahead.
I was about to change the subject, but you wanted to add something more?
Yeah, last comment. I just want to say, if you're on these other exchanges, you're probably fine for the time being until you're not fine. What Bisq seeks to be is the one sustainable kind of go-to exchange for the long term.
So Shapeshift is like Napster, and this
sure
is the BitTorrent, which comes in and nobody can shut it down.
There you go. There you
but
go. Yeah.
I was thinking right now, how does it work when you exchange Bitcoin for fiat? Do you have to sign up with your credit card, and what is the process involved?
Yeah, all data on Bisq is stored locally on your machine. So you do have to, in order to do a deal for fiat, for example, you have to add your fiat payment details. So there are several ways you can do that. I should make clear from the beginning that there is no integration with fiat payment methods on Bisq. Bisq merely acts as the coordinator that you connect to other traders on Bisq. You put in a Bitcoin deposit to make sure that you follow through on the deal according to the terms. But the fiat payment actually happens outside of Bisq on any one of various payment methods. So you can do in the US, Zelle is a common electronic payment method. You can also do bank transfers, cash deposits, money orders. These are all ways that you can trade for fiat. So when you find an offer that you like on Bisq, you accept the offer, put in your Bitcoin deposit, and that goes into a multi-signature wallet, 3 keys. One is each trader has 1 key, and then Bisq arbitrator has the 3rd key. And once that transaction confirms, then you receive the details of the other party to send the money. And you send the money, sign off, say that you've done so. The other person signs off when they receive it. 2 of 3 multi-signature. Once 2 keys are received, the Bitcoin is released.
Okay, so that's very well implemented? You have thought of all the failure possibilities and all the scammers who can use the method to get the cash without actually sending out the Bitcoin or the other way around?
Yeah, we have several measures to prevent scammers and fraudsters. For example, with fiat, chargebacks are a very common problem, and so we've been very careful to make sure that any payment methods that have a history of chargebacks are removed. And so, you know, Zelle, for example, is very hard to do chargebacks. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App even are not so friendly. They allow chargebacks much easier, so we've removed them. And then the other thing to say, I guess, here is that altcoins, you don't have chargeback risk. So you can trade the full, you can trade full 2 Bitcoin at a time with altcoins. With fiat currencies, chargeback is still a risk, even if you do, you know, Zelle or whatever bank transfer. There's still a tiny chance that you could do a chargeback, or that you that the account itself is stolen. And so what we do is we implement kind of a staged process by which, when you first download the software and you add a payment account, for the first 30 days, you're limited to, for example, 0.2 Bitcoin at a time. And then the next month, that amount is increased. And the next month, in the third month, I think you reach the full amount that you can trade, which is usually around a Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin or so. And the idea there is that if you have a stolen bank account, a scammer is not going to wait 3 months to use it, to trade 1 Bitcoin. And the smaller amounts of 0.2 Bitcoin or so are too small for a scammer to waste time with. So yeah, measures like that we put in place to reduce the risk of foul play on the network.
That's interesting. But I was thinking right now that when you basically do a switch for fiat, you are uncovering your personal data. So you're doing KYC with an institution, right?
No, you're doing KYC with a person. So your information. So when you, let's say you're trading with Zelle, for example, as your payment method. So when you open Bisq, you're going to create a payment account for Zelle, and I think for Zelle we require email address, name, and I think that's it for Zelle, because that's all it requires. Or if you're doing a cash deposit, then you would put in your name and your account number and all the other information that you would need to make a cash deposit. That information is stored on your machine, and it's only sent off of your machine when you your trade is confirmed with another party. So if you and I were trading, you would only see my information once our deposit transactions confirmed once. So once that transaction, it's one confirmation, my information is sent from my hard drive to your hard drive, encrypted. Nobody else sees it. Only you see it. And you only see it because you need to make the payment. You need to know how to pay me. So yeah, only you see it. There's no institution, there's no company, there's no one else that's seeing it. And when you make the payment, so let's say you make a payment with your bank, a cash deposit, the bank has no idea why you're making the payment. There's no connection to Bisq at all, and there's no way to make that connection. It's just, it's a totally separate thing, and only you see the information.
That's actually smart. I would have never conceived this kind of plan, to be so aware of all the dangers that can be encountered along the way. So if this is functioning right now, why do you need the DAO?
Yeah, we need the DAO to, well, I guess 3 reasons. One is kind of what I mentioned before, that we need a way to be as resistant to outside pressures as possible. Number 2 is we need a way to pay contributors for consistent professional work. So most open source projects rely on contributors doing work because they want to do the work, voluntary, right? You do it in your spare time, you do it as you can do it. The lucky open source projects get sponsorships and maybe they have high donations from users or something, but it's still very voluntary and it's hard to provide a consistent stream of revenue to fund reliable development. But Bisq is, we're not handling people's money per se, but we're coordinating payments from one party to another. We're handling Bitcoin deposits. And there are bugs. People need support. And they need to have peace of mind that bugs are going to be squashed and that they have somewhere to go when they have an issue. And so consistent work, consistent like people providing support and development in various forms is needed. And right now, without the DAO, trading fees all go to hard-coded Bisq contributor addresses. So Bisq arbitrators basically get all of the Bitcoin fees, the trading fees. But there's only, I don't know how many, maybe a couple of arbitrators that are anonymous, so I don't know who they are, how many there are. But there's a small handful of arbitrators, but like 15 or 20 regular contributors on Bisq. Those guys aren't getting paid, only the arbitrators are. What the Bisq DAO does is enable all the trading fees to be distributed to all the contributors without any central wallets and without any central bank accounts, and also without any one person to decide who gets how much. So that's why the DAO is needed. It's kind of an experiment in running a business without a business, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So what are the current fees for one transaction?
Fees, we just changed. We're doing 0.4% for offer takers and 0.2% for offer makers.
So when you make an offer and you say, I want to sell my Bitcoin for, let's say, 4.5K, I'm going to get charged 0.2% for listing the offer.
Correct.
And then 0.4% when I get the money for it?
Correct.
Okay. That's useful to know.
So it's 0.6% per trade, and then it's just divvied up. We want to incentivize people to make offers. So I think before it was about the same. I think it was 0.3 and 0.3, if I remember correctly, but we reduced it to incentivize people to make offers and boost liquidity.
Yeah, you want to increase demand.
Yeah.
So what is the story of the BSQ token that you speak of on your website?
Yeah, so the BSQ token is the tool that really enables the Bisq DAO. The BSQ token is just Bitcoin. It's colored Bitcoin. It's I guess I can walk you through the process just to be as clear as possible of an example of how BSQ token is used. So I mentioned before that the Bisq DAO will help to compensate contributors for their work on the Bisq project. And the way they're compensated is through the BSQ token. So let's say, for example, this month or month of March, I did 1 Bitcoin worth of work. Now this nice boost, we have $4,800 for one Bitcoin. April 1st, yesterday, I want to be paid 1 Bitcoin for my work. Well, the problem is that where am I going to get that 1 Bitcoin from? There is no account, there is no wallet that constantly collects all of the trading fees from Bisq traders. So there's nowhere to get those funds to pay me that 1 Bitcoin. So what the DAO enables is it basically, through voting, which we can talk about more if you like, but basically through a voting process, I'm given BSQ tokens that are worth 1 Bitcoin. These BSQ tokens are just Bitcoin that are colored to become worth 1 Bitcoin on the Bisq software. So what happens is I do 1 Bitcoin worth of work in the month of March. I make a request and I say, I've done 1 Bitcoin worth of work. This is what I did, and this is why it's worth this much money. Bisq stakeholders will vote on my request. If they approve it, Bitcoin in my wallet, just a few Satoshis, are colored to become worth 1 Bitcoin. And then I, over time, sell the BSQ on Bisq for the amount of 1 Bitcoin. It's really just a few Satoshis, but it's made to be worth much more than that to represent the value of the work that I've done.
I think it sounds a little like the Liquid network and how you have tokens that are stored on that side chain and they represent an equivalent amount of Bitcoin, except that you are trying to deduct some fees from it to cover for the expenses of development.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Liquid network, but I mean, what you said makes sense. We're basically trying to, the part that I missed talking about was the traders buy BSQ token in order to make trades on Bisq. So right now, Bisq traders are paying Bitcoin to make their Bitcoin for fees, trading fees. With the launch of the Bisq DAO, Bisq traders they can still pay Bitcoin if they want. They're not going to be compelled to use the token. But what we're going to incentivize is that people buy BSQ tokens to make trades. And when they buy this BSQ, they're going to pay Bitcoin. So if I earn BSQ, I'll get Bitcoin for the work that I did. And then the trader will get the BSQ and they'll be able to pay for their trades with BSQ. And the incentive is that the BSQ trades are going to be much cheaper. So they're going to want to use the BSQ to make trades.
That sounds a little overcomplicated. I think it will take me some time to process all that information. But do you think that the project would have worked in terms of development if you relied on donations? Or I guess you know better, you have experimented with that and you saw how users react to your product.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the project did take donations early on to bootstrap development. I think the problem with donations is it's not a very consistent source of revenue, especially with Bitcoin. I don't know if there's really a way to do recurring payments with Bitcoin yet. I'm not sure, but the thing about Bisq is that in its natural use, involves payments. So when people use Bisq, it's not out of the ordinary. It's not unexpected to be asked to pay a trading fee, which is very unique, I think, in the world of software. You know, most software, we just open it up, whether it's an app or a new program or whatever, and there's no wallet in there. There's no way to make a payment. We just open it and use it. But Bisq is a bit different in that there is a natural way to make a payment already built into it. And so I think, donations might have been a viable way of going, but I think Bisq could do better. I think collecting revenue and then distributing it is just a natural thing to do. What we're doing that's a bit out of the ordinary is distributing it in the way we are, through a DAO. There are people who I've talked to who say, why don't you just make it into a company? Why bother with all this complexity and a DAO and a token and all that? But it really boils down to that third principle of Bisq, is to be as decentralized as possible. If we made it into a company, then no matter where we were registered, there would still be that one, begging the state to exist, asking permission for Bisq to exist that we just didn't want. And by avoiding the company, we avoid that point of control, and we use Bitcoin in a way that I think is very cool, very much aligned with its own principles.
Okay, so right now, as we are speaking, we can witness what might just be the beginning of a new bull market. And we have seen today that Bitcoin has gone up in price about 16%, even more. And
yeah,
do you think that this incoming enthusiasm and exuberance on Bitcoin is going to help Bisq grow even more, and you're going to collect many more fees to be able to fully develop your vision for a better network?
Well, I'd love to see it. Yeah, I think I don't know that Bisq trading volume has been very correlated with Bitcoin price. I know that's I think it's because Bisq has mainly been driven by word of mouth, and so when word of mouth spikes, then volume spikes, and the trading volume is kind of it's been around for about 3 years now in operation. The exchange has been live for about 3 years, but it's been bootstrapped entirely, and like I said, relied on word of mouth. So it's had kind of slow organic growth over the years, and because of that, the trends in growth have taken their own growth curve. But yeah, I would love to see. I think now, if we are at the beginning of a bull market, I think now this one might be a little bit different than past ones, because the trend in KYC with other exchanges is a lot different. I think it's, with the various other exchanges implementing KYC in the past few months, just people, I'm seeing this on Twitter, are just a lot more cognizant of the need for an exchange or a solution like Bisq. So I would love to see the market, renewed interest in Bitcoin, and the market move translate into more traffic for Bisq. It'd be great.
I guess we also need education in this regard, as when you first enter the space, I guess you go to Coinbase or Binance or whatever mean is the most straightforward for you to buy some coins with your credit card. But then
Yeah.
I guess from that point onwards, part of your education should be to understand the purpose of cryptocurrencies and how it's not just about evading taxes. I guess at the end of the day, we also have to declare Bitcoin transactions. But it's also about privacy and trying to build a better financial system that doesn't have all the Orwellian components of the current one, which is leaning towards that idea of a cashless society where anyone, and by anyone, I mean banks, can see your transaction history. They can see where you have been, what time you're buying stuff. They can determine patterns in your consumer behavior. And to me, that's scary. That's one of the reasons why I'm into Bitcoin, and also the idea that you get to use an asset which is not controlled and cannot be inflated by a government.
Yeah, and that's the reason Bisq exists. Bisq, if you really look at it, we call it an exchange, but there is no central order matching. There is no central order book. The order book that you see when you open the software is just a collection of other people who are also running the software, the offers that they have open. It's all peer-to-peer. And so I think it's more accurate to probably call it a Bitcoin marketplace as opposed to an exchange. And the reason I brought that up is that it's no different from you and I meeting in a park or a coffee shop and doing a deal. It's just a digital version of that. If you and I voluntarily, because we want to, it's meeting up, I don't have to know who you are. You don't have to know who I am. You have dollars, I have Bitcoin, and we do a deal. That's it. And so that's really what, and actually, before Bisq was called Bisq, it was called BitSquare. And the BitSquare name was a play on the term Satoshi Square, where people would do exactly that. They would just meet up in person, and Bisq is just a digital version of that.
That's really nice. So I'm not sure if I have any more questions to ask you. If there is anything that you want to add or you think that might be relevant for this interview.
No, I guess I would say, the Bisq DAO is coming up. It's kind of a big thing for Bisq. It's, Bisq has been around for about 5 years. It's been in operation now for about 3 years. I think April 16th, if I have my dates correct, April 16th is when Bisq is going to turn 3 in terms of it being in operation for 3 years. And the DAO is an absolutely massive step. It's really the completion of the Bisq vision to become as decentralized as possible. So that's coming up. We're just entering the final stages of testing right now. And we're hoping to have that launched in a couple of weeks. So yeah, just, if I could say one thing to people watching, just, if you're interested, if anything that we've said about the DAO or Bisq has caught your attention, I'd encourage you to follow us on Twitter and follow how that goes. I think it's a very interesting experiment in not only running a Bitcoin marketplace or a Bitcoin exchange, but also just how to run a project in general, a software project that's self-sufficient and completely free of any kind of state involvement and decentralized, truly decentralized without any kind of a company or entity.
Well, Steve, I have one last question. I can't believe that I missed this one. So let's say that I am a local Bitcoins user and you're trying to convince me to get rid of it and start using the Bisq network. How would you try to persuade me? And let's say that I'm not technical at all. And
Ooh, good question. So far, Bisq users have been pretty technical, and just because it's a little bit, it's hard for most people to understand why should I download software. I just go to this website and get my work done there. I think it's important to, I think the best approach is, it's actually simpler in that you don't have to create an account. You just download the software and you use it. You don't have to wait for KYC. You don't have to wait for any kind of approval. And the other thing I was going to say, oh, wait, I'm forgetting. Local Bitcoins. Speed, because you don't have to register.
Yeah, they're custodial also. You have to keep your Bitcoins in some kind of, what's the name of it? Well, I don't remember the exact term.
I haven't used it in a while. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're not custodial either. So that's a big thing. Yeah. I mean, no matter what you use in terms of centralized exchanges or local Bitcoins, you're going to be entrusting your Bitcoin to someone else. On Bisq, you don't do that. Man, I forgot what I was going to say. I guess I can say that nobody has lost Bitcoin on Bisq. 3 years it's been working. Nobody's lost any Bitcoin. There have been a couple of 3 chargebacks, I think, out of 26,000 trades. So we're very careful to security is our #1 priority. It shows. And yeah, it's simple and quick. You download the software and you use it. It's just like downloading, Google Chrome or Firefox. You just download it and you use it. The same thing with Bisq.
Or the Coinbase app. I guess that's the most popular one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then you have to download that and you have to wait for their approval. No approvals here.
Okay. Thank you very much. And this was a very good interview, and I'm happy that we got to do this. It's going to get published on Crypto Insider. And have a nice rest of your day.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Vlad. Appreciate it.